Hello everybody! This is kind of a surprise video. It's even a little bit of a surprise to me. Monday morning, first thing, before I'm even awake, I'm going to a neurologist to get a potential diagnosis in Aspergers. Aspergers. That's Autism Spectrum. I'm not going to say disorder. I just said it. And when I say Asperger's, I'm still using that outdated term, but people who have it tend to use that instead of saying autism spectrum, blah, blah. It's just such a huge spectrum that Asperger's really kind of hones in on what you're talking about, which really means high functioning. I don't really fully agree with that. High functioning autism. Call it what you will. Autism spectrum. DSM-5 is kind of a criteria they came up with, I think, since 2013 or so. Maybe before that it was DSM-4. In 2013, the DSM-5 replaced autistic disorder, Asperger's disorder, and other pervasive developmental disorders with the umbrella diagnosis of autism spectrum disorder. Can we stop calling it disorder? What is the DSM-5 criteria for autism? Restricted repetitive behaviors, great distress, difficulty changing focus or action. Yeah. Marked deficits in verbal and nonverbal social communication skills. Okay, this is going to be interesting. Social impairments apparent even with supports in place. Limited initiation of social interactions. Yeah. And reduced or abnormal responses to social overtures from others. Yeah, probably. So, okay, right away, you're probably thinking, Elaine Walker, you do not have autism. You seem normal enough, maybe a little quirky, but normal enough. And I've obviously been very independent my whole life, got a master's degree, blah, blah, blah. So how could I possibly have autism? Well, let me tell you, I had no idea what autism even was, really. I definitely didn't know what Asperger's was. Even though I had Asperger's students, I should have researched it more back then. I would have probably figured it out. But with women, it's been severely underdiagnosed, and I can just clearly see why. When they say you have terrible communication skills, that might not be the case with a female. Females, and I remember this very clearly, ever since elementary school, what I would do is observe other girls. I want to be a little like that, a little like that, a little like that. And so I would piece myself together from all these different friends that I had or people I saw. So my personality and the way I presented myself was literally a conglomeration of all of the different girls that I knew in elementary school. I'm pretty sure I had very little of my personality that originated from within when I was at school. When I was at home, I was probably fully myself with my brother. And in fact, we would play a lot and be really loud and hilarious and perfectly comfortable. And then at school, I tended to be very quiet. And I don't remember being shy particularly. Someone's at the door. I think it's the kitty. Hello, Macaroon. Okay, so there's a huge difference between women and men, girls and boys when it comes to Asperger's. A lot of the tests I've noticed, and I've taken quite a few by now, they ask questions about how good are you at social skills? Do people think you're weird? Blah, blah, blah. Anyway, they ask questions like that instead of how do you feel in a conversation? How do you feel afterwards? You know, it almost doesn't matter whether you present yourself well or not. It's how exhausted are you afterwards, as opposed to the neurotypical person who has a social situation and then they go home and they're fine, or they might even get energy from social situations, which I would say is probably much more normal in a world like this where you really need to interact with people to get anything done or to have a life or be happy or whatever. But if you have Asperger's or autism, it is exhausting to have to try to, especially small talk, things like that. So someone who's not high functioning will just not bother small talking. They just won't even know what to do. You'll say, "How are you?" And they'll be like, "What kind of a question is that? How am I supposed to explain in detail how I am? Oh, do they want a vague answer? How do I give a vague answer? There's so many different aspects to how I'm doing right now. Do they want to know my whole life that led up to this point? Or do they really just want to know how I am at this moment, like the last 5 minutes or this whole day?" I mean, it just goes on and on. It's a terrible question, how are you? But someone who's high functioning gets really used to going, oh no, if someone says, "Hi, how are you?" "Oh, hi, I'm fine, how are you?" Sometimes I get a little carried away, or I try to find a way to really get any kind of meaty conversation with someone just because it's more satisfying. It's actually less tiring to have a real conversation. There was a fireman parent at Alice's school, and he said, how are you?" And I said, "Oh, I'm okay. I had very high blood pressure this morning, so I'm kind of worried. It was like 154 over 90 something, and my heart rate was really up. But other than that, I'm okay. I feel okay now. I feel much better after taking a walk." And I thought, well, in my mind, I was thinking he's a fireman, so he must be more in tune with kind of medical situations, so he might actually be interested. And he's a dude, so he might actually be interested in more details. I was just telling him the scientific details of how I was doing. But I could tell that he was kind of like, oh, yeah. And I'm pretty good at, I don't know if I'm good at it, but I feel like I'm good at telling if someone's starting to not want to hear what I'm saying, or if I'm going on too much or something. But really pay attention. So social situations are extremely tiring because every moment I'm thinking, how are they perceiving me? Am I looking them in the eye? What is my face doing? So yeah, it's just 100% learned behavior, whereas a neurotypical human just kind of gets social skills naturally without having to think about it. Obviously, it's also trial and error. How do people react to you? Do they like you? Do they not like you? But I think it's more of an unconscious thing, whereas for someone like a Vulcan, they would need to 100%, if they cared, try to learn it. And it's something you can learn. You just have to allow yourself time to have alone time and nap time. So with the research I've done in the last couple months, I have learned that there are a lot of women out there, and there's a lot of especially young women, say in their 20s and 30s, making videos now going, "I have Aspergers. I never realized that there were other people out there like me." And it's just completely, it just breaks my heart. So if I do indeed have it, and we'll hopefully find out Monday or however long it takes them to tell me the results of this 4-hour long day I'm going to have, then I really would want to spend some time kind of getting the word out there. Because if there are millions of women like me who we grow up our whole life, especially in adulthood when you become kind of more aware of yourself, I know I'm different. So this is kind of like your inner thoughts just walking around. I know I'm different. There is no way these other women feel like I do from the inside. I can just tell. I kind of associate more with these dudes who like details and facts and figures, and they like talking about stuff and things and not emotions and people and gossip, but just even in general, it's this feeling you can't put your finger on. Like I feel like I'm almost from another planet. I really associate with Vulcans. So, I mean, ever since second grade, I had a huge crush on Spock for no reason. Well, I guess maybe there was a reason. Just really associate with that, especially the half human, half Vulcan, and kind of hiding your true self, but then like not really knowing what your true self is, because there's never a chance when you have Asperger's, especially maybe if you're a woman and you care more about how you present yourself and how you're received. There's not much of a chance to just be yourself, whatever that means, in front of anyone, in a social situation. So how do you ever know what yourself really is when you're just trying the whole time to act a certain way? And to this day, I'm like part Jennifer, part Heidi, part Trisha. Well, I'm pretty sure I've developed my own personality by now, but it's still pieced together from whatever I've learned. I could say my personality is my own creation, but I created it. It didn't just happen. I always had roommates. I never wanted to be fully alone, I guess, which is kind of surprising now that I think about it. But I always would get a roommate that was either part of my special interest, let's say in my band, or someone that was a fun person, but we could ignore each other most of the time if we wanted to. There was no stress about, I need to take care of them or anything. They were just an adult living with me. So a few years ago, and that's just situational, because I moved in to help take care of my parents to get them out of assisted living and back in the house, and then life got more complicated, and now I'm married and have a bigger family. So for the first time, which I'll just say started in 2016, it blindsided me. I didn't realize, there was a reason I set up my life to have massive amounts of alone time, literally every day. Something made me finally look into Aspergers. Just one little thing steered me in that direction. Suddenly I saw all these high-functioning adults with Aspergers, especially the female. Well, actually, I related more to the guys at first, and I finally found some girls that I really related to. And even if they were more severe or had more, like stimming or things they do, or like messy hair, whatever, like even if they were more severe, I would still literally 100% relate to everything they were saying. So even if it was a symptom I didn't have, I could relate their symptom to some other symptom I've had. Walking in lava rocks always bugged me. So it's kind of like the fingernail on chalkboard thing. So to me, fingernails on chalkboard was no better or worse than so many other things that bothered me, but other people don't seem to worry about drawers or cabinets. But anyway, this has been greatly accentuated in the last few weeks, especially since this pandemic thing. Something about the pandemic has made me go haywire, probably with my empathy or feeling bad for the other people in the house that are cooped up. I personally don't mind it, but the other kids, And so there's something going on now where the drawers that are built into the house have a certain scratchiness, and the cabinets, when you close them, the squeaky floors, there's so many things.
Mom, come on. Get my Ovaltine.
It's not the sound of the drawer, it's not the sound of the cabinet, it's not the sound of the squeaky floor, it's the vibration of it that I can feel in my body. So if I close a drawer with my leg, it doesn't bother me that much, it somehow buffers it. But anyway, lately, with this pandemic continuing, this is like for the first time in my life, I'm noticing symptoms escalating. That's never really happened to me before. So now it's actually starting to become the sound sometimes, because I've noticed a few times just in the last few days where someone else has done something and I'm like, wait, I didn't touch that. I didn't feel the vibration. It literally had to be the sound that just now made me go, eh. And then noticing more and more the TV sound, a lot of times it'll tend to be a little distorted or way too high-endy, and it causes the exact kind of pain, I guess I'll call it, in my body. So that's really alarming, because as an electronic musician, I cannot be annoyed by sound. That can't happen. But that said, I have always had a tough time with the mastering process, and that's because audio compression, when it's applied to a whole mix, and this bugs me on the radio, listening to radio mixes, especially in the 90s and early 2000s when it tended to be more of a wall of sound pumping. A lot of top 40 music that Alice likes now isn't that bad now. It's a little more sparse. But anyway, it used to bug me because it would feel like my eardrums were being pressed in, like held in. It's very sensitive to compression. And then the high-endiness, where they try to squash the music mix to be all high-end, that always was painful for me. Just thought that I had my particular style of music that I liked. But anyway, yeah, it's weird because it's escalating. So I have heard, and when I'm doing this research, that sometimes symptoms can escalate in times of stress. And it's just very strange. So I think maybe the reason I never experienced this before was because I've never had social anxiety to this extent. That must be my number one thing. So everyone that I can find online who says, okay, I took my test, I got diagnosed, they always suggest to take materials with you. Take a list of your symptoms, take a list of the tests you've taken, take evidence, because when you get there, and I know this is true for me, you'll forget what to say, you'll freeze up, whatever. So I made a list of symptoms, and it's pretty long, actually. Okay, so let me just see if I can go through this, and I'll just cut out parts that I decide I don't want to put. So I've always loved alone time. Right, so Aspergers, autism people in general really like alone time, partly because you can control your environment and you can do whatever you want. It's great. I can never seem to get enough of it. When I was really little, I liked alone time because I would happily paint or draw or build doll furniture out of shoe boxes or sew doll clothes or whatever. I like to make stuff. See, I've always felt different in some way from other people, especially noticed my difference from other girls, but I could never put my finger on it. I felt like I was from another planet. I have pervasive, absorbing interests in special topics. Yes, since I can remember, I would happily work away on my special interests, morning till night. The worst thing to ever say to someone with Asperger's, are you done with your work? I don't just have one lifetime interest, but since I was very young, it was music and electronic music. I would say I did have the typical girl thing where I had like this crazy crush on Billy Idol, and I had to know everything about him and get every magazine article and make scrapbooks. And I still to this day have a bin full of Billy Idol handkerchiefs and pictures and anything I could get my hands on. And I still have his bumper stickers on my mirror, which is now Alice's mirror. Anyway, but for the most part, I have more kind of nerdy special interests, like hardware synthesizers, electronic music, modifying keyboards for different tunings. And earlier, I used to make various devices to trigger notes. Spent a couple of years saving up these makeup cases so that I could put triggers in them. And these wires, I never did finish it. These are supposed to have lights. I want to put little lights that light up when you hit them. Endless hours can be spent on that stuff. So someone's special interest can be one thing their whole entire life. I knew an autistic kid that was obsessed with airplanes and every detail about airplanes, and we'll see, maybe that'll be his interest his whole life. He could certainly make a career out of it. Some people are obsessed with one thing. I shouldn't say the word obsessed. I know that might be I don't know yet what the politically correct words are within the Asperger's community, but obsession probably is not the right word. Just interest. So I spent 8 years writing a philosophy book. I'm not a philosopher. I always got good grades, like A's and B's forever, and then suddenly got a D in philosophy. I think I got a D in astronomy class. Anyway, like the two things I love. But I wrote this book that took 8 years of intense concentration to research everything and writing it. And then when you think you're done, you're really halfway done. So that took a lot of time off from music and building keyboards and stuff. But then I always know, well, I'll get back to that eventually. I almost always finish things. So I'll always have electronic music, and then I'm pretty sure other things will come and go. And then now my new special interest since I met Bruce has been mathematics and my visual math. And I'm currently working on a video for that. Okay, what's next? I organize my books by height and color. Is that normal? They're mostly kind of the same topic, so it doesn't really matter, I guess, if I organize them by topic too much. I hate clutter. I have to live with it no matter what, so I learned to get used to it and gloss over it, but I don't like clutter. Seeing, I put thinking in parentheses. Seeing thinking is way easier with my eyes closed. Oh, yeah, okay. Oh, I can think so much better now because I see. Yeah, so I think in pictures, I guess. Pictures, movies, objects moving around. So it's not just like a photograph of something, it's a whole scene. Every now and then, if I'm in a conversation, when I do lose sight of paying attention to how I'm talking and how they're perceiving me and that whole ongoing tiring thing, when I do lose track of that, which I think is probably a good thing, that I'm finally talking without thinking, the problem with that is that I see the whole scene I'm thinking about, and then I am no longer there in front of this person I'm talking to. I'm talking about this thing I'm seeing, and that's when I tend to go on too long. Bruce says it's charming. Okay, next. I see metaphors visibly. Then it takes a second and a half to process what the person is trying to say. Even the ones I know pretty well, I have to see it and then realize. Let me think of one. Oh yeah, so Bruce reminded me because I was yelling at the TV during the Democratic debates because the news broadcasters were like, "Oh, he's going for his jugular." I'm picturing blood squirting out of a jugular vein. It takes me a second and a half, 2 seconds. I'm like, okay, calm down, Elaine. He's not talking about that. It's a metaphor, or whatever you call it. Idiom, I don't know the difference. What's the other one? Wait, Bruce sent me another one. He's carrying the weight on his shoulders. Yeah, just stuff like that. The weight of the world is on his shoulders. Of course, I have to spend a second and a half of my precious life thinking about planet Earth on someone's shoulders and then realize that's not what the person's saying. It's just metaphors. Good Lord, people with your metaphors. The funny thing is that I'll end up using them too. If I'm saying it, it's okay. But if you say it to me, it takes a while. I have a slight hypersensitivity to touch. So like many people, I don't like light, tickly touch. Well, it depends. It totally depends. If I'm planning on it and like someone's giving me a massage, okay, I'll tickle your back now or something like that. It's okay, but in general. So I like tight squeezes. I would definitely want one of those autistic blankets that weighs like 1,000 pounds to be on me, like pressing me down. I like my daily routine, but not schedules. Once interrupted, I can generally get back to what I'm doing afterwards, but I feel very frustrated that I get interrupted. Attention to detail of any project. I have a lot of attention to detail, and literally as many hours as it takes. Oh. Okay, so here's one. So if I'm just sitting here thinking, not looking in the mirror, like right now I'm looking at my image and I can tell I'm a girl. But okay, so if I just close my eyes and I'm just sitting here thinking randomly, do I feel like a guy or a girl? I don't even think I could do it now because I know people will be watching this, and the feedback from the other person makes me feel like I'm a girl because that's part of the masking. But let me tell you, if I'm not with anyone, if I'm just by myself and I think, am I a girl or a guy? I don't feel like a girl or a guy. There's literally nothing that makes me feel more like a girl or more like a guy. Although, that said, I definitely accept that I'm a girl, and I like to present myself like a girl, and I like the idea of femininity and all that stuff, but I'm not from the inside really necessarily one or the other. I have a tiny bit of synesthesia. So this is the extent of it as far as I can tell. Numbers 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. 0, 1, 2, 3. I feel like 3 is supposed to have a color like it maybe used to, but I can't. Whatever it was, I don't remember it. 4 for sure is brown, 5 is blue, 6 is yellow, 7 is green, 8 is orange, 9 is red. There's no question. Yeah, there's just no way to get rid of that. So I don't know where that came from. Okay, my default state of mind, and this is a healthy daily situation. If everything's great, my default state of mind is mild frustration. I walk around feeling mildly frustrated, then I know everything's okay. And I think that's just a general feeling of there's never enough time in the day to do everything I want. There's never ever going to be enough alone time to just work and work and work. And just if someone with Aspergers or autism or with this mindset, you're never going to feel fully just comfortable in the world because of the way the world is set up. I often have to pause between some words to think of the next part of the sentence. So I used to have an awkward rhythm of speech, but I've worked on that a lot throughout my life. I don't think it's too noticeable anymore. So you might not have noticed any kind of weird pause. I'm doing it on purpose now. Actually had to learn how to slow down and talk in a way where I could think of what's coming next. But I always used to notice that. And people I was talking to, especially people that knew me really well, like let's say my brother or one of my good friends, I'd be saying something and then thinking of the next word, and they would kind of go. And that would make me realize, oh, wait, I'm pausing in a weird way. I score very low on empathy, but yet during something like the pandemic, I'm overwhelmed with what I guess is empathy, like crying on the inside feeling for literally every human in the entire planet that lost their job or their life got disrupted in a way that just really hurts something they've been working so hard on. Or, a mother that can't figure out who's going to watch my kid. I need to go back to work, but they can't go to school or whatever. That's things that aren't any fault of someone. That I have a lot of empathy for that. So it's weird that I score extremely low on empathy, but I probably have very little empathy for everyday kind of dumb problems you get yourself into. Maybe that's because I've gotten myself into so many dumb little problems, but I always manage to figure out a way to solve it that I'm like, yeah, you'll figure it out. I'm always sleepy. I just want to sleep all day. I probably do need to sleep more and exercise more. I usually exercise a lot. Like I got a black belt and all that stuff. But in the last couple of years, I haven't exercised enough. But I associate the low energy with social exhaustion. I have a hard time reading / remembering instructions, even short microwave instructions. Does anyone else have this problem? I'm incredibly proactive to the point where it causes me to make mistakes. Sometimes this means messing up on incredibly big life decisions. But more often it's just something like overly organizing hard drives to the point where I lose stuff. I can't explain it. Okay, I feel like I go completely haywire in my brain if two people are trying to talk to me at the same time, especially if they need something. Mom needs something, Alice needs something. They don't even realize the other person is also talking to me. I go haywire. I'm like, okay, I'll make an announcement, public announcement. Mom, stop talking while Alice finishes what she's saying, or vice versa. Or whoever talked first, I'll say, Alice, stop talking while Mom finishes. Okay, Mom is done. Now, Alice, you can talk. Like, it's so ridiculous. But I can't handle it. Like two things at the same time, it just turns into an explosion. It's hard to see through other people's eyes. Yeah, I'm not even going to attempt to see through your eyes. You can tell me. I'll be interested. I mean, I'd like to hear it, but it's hard for me to just do that. I have very little inhibition when it comes to talking about personal stuff. Okay, well, that explains this video. It's hard to interpret or explain my emotions. Okay, eye contact feels very invasive. I feel like I'm invading the other person, but they probably want eye contact. I'm not bad at giving eye contact, but it's tiring. So I don't bond very easily. I have like a billion acquaintances and friends and 5,000 friends on Facebook, but just a handful of friends, most of them I met in adult life, that I feel 100% comfortable with, and they're 100% comfortable with me, and I'm sure it's because we don't judge at all. We can act like weird or however we want. We could be completely politically incorrect. We can just blank out, just be 100% ourselves. So maybe we're all a bit odd in that way. So that's the way it works. I'm not very good at really deep bonding with completely, obviously neurotypical women. Very hard for me. That said, I do have friendships that I've kept since, first grade. And they are very normal, smart, great people. Let's say a question on one of these ASPE tests or autism tests is, do you make friends easily? What the heck does that mean? Sure, I make friends easily. Hey, how you doing? Yeah, let's be friends. Here's my number. I got your number. Let's hang out. Okay, are we friends? And then you might hang out a few times, or maybe even with your kids, but are you really friends? So, it's just how you interpret the question. So people who, especially females, who can mask are great at making friends. And, yeah, so, okay, it drives me nuts when people try to give subtle cues about things, if you know what I mean. Subtle. Everything's so subtle. Okay, yeah. Never mind. Okay, so that was the list of my symptoms. So besides this list of symptoms, I'm also going to bring some tests that I've taken to my neurologist appointment Monday. Boop, boop, boop. I took this test, and look, I am an arrow that points to neurodiverse talent. Not normal talent, but neurodiverse talent. Then I took this test again a couple months later, and it was a little different. It also was sort of like an arrow pointing to talent, but I guess I wasn't feeling very confident in these other areas that day. It's a little bit different than the first time I took it. But you can see the similarity. And then people I know that are normal, they took the test, it just all goes into the blue. It's just normal. Okay, there's a standard test out there that you'll find everywhere. It's got 50 questions. I took it like 4 times till I realized, oh wait, this is the same exact test. So I always score 39 or 40 or something like that. I think I'm armed with all the stuff I could possibly need to remember what to say during my diagnosis. And he's probably going to not even look at any of this and just send me through a series of tests. So we'll see. I'll let you know in great detail how this test actually goes, because I've had a hard time finding anything online about other people getting diagnosed and what is the actual test they get. Most of them are with psychiatrists. I'm kind of glad I'm with a neurologist, so he maybe talk a little bit less about emotional, personal stuff and just kind of get down to the nitty-gritty. I wish he could scan my brain, but I don't think he's going to actually do that. Let's wait and see what happens Monday. I'll be a little nervous. And if I'm not Asperger's, I will be kind of disappointed, because then I'll have to spend my lifetime figuring out why I feel different. Why do I relate extremely strongly to people with adult Asperger's? And if I do have it, I will just be relieved that I can, not that I like labels necessarily, but in this case, I think it's a good kind of label. To say, I have Asperger's. That explains so much. My brain is just simply wired differently. So I'm so sure of this. What do you guys think? You could place a bet, like, what, is Elaine going to be Asperger's or not on Monday? What do you think? Let me know in the comments below.